Back in the groove after a little hiatus on the Smash. Welcome into a Tuesday edition, holiday week, of course, everybody, of the Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Forrest. He is Ira Schofel, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang, and tonight is going to be a fun evening because we're going to let you drive the bus out there in the chat for quite a bit of tonight's discussion. We're going to talk another Florida State position preview, looking at an offensive segment as we're in the offseason now preparing for Florida State's fall camp, which is not that far away considering that we're under 100 days until they kick off the season. And we're going to talk big picture stuff as well. But first of all, the most important thing, Ira, how's it going? What you drinking?
Actually, just some Diet Coke, buddy. I'll be honest with you. Didn't get as much sleep as I needed last night. Was dragging about an hour ago. I thought maybe I could take a nap, and I decided to go for some caffeine instead. So trying to get through the next couple hours and then maybe get some better sleep tonight. How about you?
Understood. Was there a happy hour Sunday night at Tavello in Thomasville? What was going on?
I wish that was the case. No, I don't know. I really don't know. I just couldn't sleep. I just couldn't get sleep.
Yeah. Oddly enough, I've gotten very good sleep of late, so I'm okay, which means I should really have – I know Kayvon always in the chat is saying, guys, come on, let's spice it up a little bit. But it's just seltzer water, man. It's just seltzer water. We got to hydrate. It's warm out right now, getting ready for a regional weekend of baseball in Tallahassee, which, you know what, weather-wise, Ira, this might be one of the coolest, most balmy regionals in Tallahassee history. It looks like they're calling for mid to upper 80s over the weekend. That's not your usual 105 and stormy.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll believe it till I see it. We'll see. But yeah, to your point, Kayvon, the peer pressure is real because honestly, before I poured this soda, I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe I should go get a beer to keep Kayvon happy. And then I was like, no, I'll probably be dozing off in the second half of the show. So I needed some caffeine. But I'm really looking forward to postseason baseball. College baseball is, it's just one of my more fun events to cover. I've always, going back to when I was in college as a student journalist, I've always just I love tournaments. Tournaments to me are just so much fun. And then, college baseball, I think they do it really well. And it's just cool. You can see these teams come in and do or die experiences. And you see teams have to, really kind of maneuver, shore up any weaknesses they have, maybe take some chances that they don't want to make, that they wouldn't do in a normal weekend series, but because their season's on the line. And you just think back to all the great series, including some of the ones that started off awful. Like, I think, I always think back to that team, that Bucknell team that had the pitcher that pitched the game of his life and, had, blanked Florida State and Buster Posey in the first round. And you're just like, how did that just happen? And then, it just creates so many fun experiences. And so I'm definitely looking forward to this one.
I tend to agree too. Tournament settings, just because there's any number of people that are in the parking lot or tailgate area, you just see all different flags that people are there for. I can recall probably about a dozen years ago now, Florida State hosted a regional against Alabama. That was Mitch Gaspard, who was here. I felt like 3 out of 4 years, something like that. They were here. And UCF was the number 2 seed. And their head coach was clearly lobbying for the right to succeed Mike Martin in his opening press conference. I'm like, oh my God, lay it on any more thick, dude. And the fan bases were kind of getting at each other, the UCF Alabama game, because the dugouts were screaming at each other. Meanwhile, the Animals and other Noles fans are just sitting in the stands watching and just kind of eating their popcorn going, holy cow, this is a very feisty atmosphere. It's all cool. And it starts on Friday for Florida State, which earned a number 9 seed in terms of the NCAA rankings 1 through 16. Man, they were that close to a top 8 seed. I didn't think it. I thought they would have had to have beat North Carolina and maybe outright won the ACC in order to be a top 8 seed. But clearly a win over North Carolina might have just been enough. And it seemed like Link Jarrett felt that way too.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that too. I was totally surprised when they got a 9 seed. I thought, again, RPI is not be all end all, but they were 14 and they really kind of, I felt like not only winning one game in the ACC tournament, but more importantly, losing 2 of 3 at home to North Carolina. They had some other stumbles along the way. I just thought they're probably out. I thought they had to at least win the series against North Carolina to really have a strong chance. And then when they lost that series, I thought they were done. Then to see them at 9, you're like, well, shoot, maybe they could have. But then, we were talking about a little bit on headlines. Like, you wonder if it didn't even matter at that point in terms of what were they really 9th? Like, were they really close to getting in? Or was it more once they seeded the top 8, then they just figured out how to go the rest from there. So we'll never know. But I do think, it speaks well of, the program to, again, it's just another nice piece that shows how well the Florida State baseball is thought of.
Let me give you a quick scenario before we get into football and other stuff. Let's just say that we get to Saturday night into Sunday morning, like overnight time. Florida State has won their first 2 games this weekend, so they're going to be sitting back and waiting for that one-loss matchup. And Oregon State's done the same. Are you dispatching Corey in his car to go to Corvallis beginning on Sunday morning to get a jump start on this?
Right, that moment? No, it's that's probably not going to happen. I think Corey's pretty much basically put his foot down. He's not going to Corvallis. So right now, we're trying to figure out what we would do in that situation. But I'm hoping, and I think most FSU fans are hoping, certainly Link Jarrett in the baseball team are hoping that maybe Oregon State gets tripped up, and that whoever wins that regional will have to come to Tallahassee.
So if you have questions for us tonight, be sure to file them in the chat. Make sure to like the video. It's an odd time on night, but it's a shortened week. It's kind of nice to be already at a Tuesday night. Feels like the weekend is that much closer. And Ira, this is also something that reminds you as we get into regional baseball, these sports, you're just checking them off the list as like distractions until we have to focus totally on the lead up to football season. Softball season comes to an end over the weekend. The men's golf team crashed and burned down the stretch last night. That was very painful in this household. And now baseball is the last one standing. So we'll have full coverage of it all week on Warchant TV. It'll be awesome. But I still do want to talk a lot of football, and I'm sure you do as well. We'll get into a position breakdown talking about the offensive line in a little bit. But I'm always curious this time of year just to, as the managing editor of the site, you have written pieces in the last couple of weeks on the greater issue in college football of NIL and the portal,
the House
settlement, the college football playoff, like all the big issues where this thing is going from Amelia Island. You have a great article out today about Greg Sankey, the SEC's commissioner, sniping at the ACC and the Big 12 after they just put up their piece, fingers like this. They were like mini-me, and they kicked him right in the groin, did Greg Sankey. So just where's your head at right now? Because that's the big picture stuff. But then also, obviously, Florida State's newcomers are on campus today, the summer enrollees. And now the Noles are gearing back up for fall camp, which is not that far away.
The SEC thing that's going on this week is going to be interesting. I really think the SEC meetings just started, I guess, yesterday over there in the Panhandle and Miramar Beach, I think. And then, the ACCs were a couple weeks ago. And coming out of the ACC meetings, we joked about it a little bit at the time that it felt like Jim Phillips was maybe overstating how big of a seat at the table maybe the ACC and Big 12 even have anymore. A lot of people feel like, the SEC and the Big 10 are going to kind of do what they want to do, and it's up to the Big 12 and the ACC whether they want to still be part of it or they want them to leave. And so, Jim Phillips presented it as if they're very much colleagues. They're working together. They're trying to come up with a good plan for the playoff committee. And Sankey's comments last night were basically like, keep your mouth shut. Like, because he was mad that last week when they voted along with the idea of going to straight seeding, getting rid of the what last year, the 12-team playoff, the first year they went to the playoff, they did the top 4 seeds were ostensibly going to be the highest ranked conference champions. And I guess at the beginning, the ACC, the Big 12 probably really pushed for that. They wanted to make sure it wasn't just all SEC teams getting buys at the top of the playoff. So they got it, but then it ended up being kind of a joke. Arizona State ended up being one of the top 4 seeds. It just didn't make sense who ended up getting the top 4 seeds. So now the ACC and Big 10 went along, or the ACC and Big 12 went along with going to just let the college football playoff committee seed them. And if it's 4 SEC and Big 10 teams, then so be it. And then they came out, Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, came out and said, this wasn't the best for our conference, but we're doing what's best for the sport as a whole. And basically kind of throwing it at Greg Sankey and Tony Petit, the Big 10 commissioner, saying, you guys need to do the same when it comes to when we go to 16 teams, who gets in. And Sankey did not like that at all. So I think this is going to be interesting. I'm curious if he will make more comments as this week goes on, if he'll do like a wrap up. I've not covered the SEC spring meetings. The way the ACC does it is Jim Phillips, might give some comments during the week, and then at the end he does his big sit down. I don't know if Sankey does another big sit down, but I'm curious to see kind of what comes of that and whether or not the SEC kind of throws down the gauntlet again and says, listen, we don't have to include you. We can just do our own thing. And it just feels like things have escalated again.
You might just get an itch and then text over to the control room in Bristol and say, hey, I want to go on. Clear the schedule.
Yeah.
They're like, well, coach, great moments in Ole Miss history is on right now. Bump it. It's my time. I've got 5 minutes. I want to complain about the college football playoff. And it does seem like there's a coordinated attack on the committee that's happening today. Florida's athletic director, Oklahoma's athletic director already putting things in print about how they don't like the committee in the selection process. Greg Sankey saying we've already conceded too much. That's what my member schools are telling me. We've conceded too much if we give up 2 auto bids to the Big 12 and the ACC. Like, they came in with their ducks in a row about what they wanted to hit on. And who knew it would be the committee that was going to catch some strays? I did not see that coming, but that's been at least day one what a lot of officials in the SEC are going after. They clearly have a plan for this week, Ira.
Yeah, and listen, man, the question that we go back to, and it was the question I asked Jim Phillips in Amelia Island, and I think we'll be asking ourselves this until this all plays out, is like, what options do the ACC and the Big 12 really have? Like, what alternatives do they have? Can they, there is no czar. There's no governing body that's going to say, okay, you 4 have to get along. I guess the idea is that at the end of the day, you hope that the Big 10 and the SEC realize they're better off with an ACC and a Big 12 that are viable and are part of the conversation. But I don't know how far, Jim Phillips and Yormark want to play chicken. So, man, it's one of those things that it's not why any of us are college football fans or why any of us want to cover this. So I don't want to spend like too much time talking about it, but it all obviously has a huge impact on, it's going to have an impact on everybody as they make these decisions, because they don't have a plan in place for the 16-team playoff yet. And that was one of the other things it seemed like Sankey was really pissed off about was, the ACC really stalled them when they wanted to go to a playoff, go to a 12-team playoff. And that kind of gummed up the works, and they finally went along with it. And now he feels like they're gumming up the works again. He just wants to get to the getting. And he doesn't want to hear any more rabble rousing from the commenters down in the other conferences.
Yes, Jim Phillips and a game of chicken. I can hear Florida State fans right now opining as to how long they think he would last in a game of chicken. A couple of questions coming in early. I am shocked here, Ira. We've got 3 questions already specific about Florida State's pitching staff and the offseason. Holy cow. Craig says, do you think we'll bolster the pitching staff in the offseason? Dr. Lasagna, great name. How much for a top-flight left-handed pitcher? NSB Knoll, do you think we'll go after some pitchers the offseason? Help is needed, I think. I don't know what's in the water out there, but on the top of the mind, before Florida State's baseball season is over, people want to go get more arms. The answer to those questions, I think, generally speaking, Ira, is more expensive than ever. The market keeps going up for top-flight college free agents. I saw that Purdue had somebody enter the transfer portal earlier today, a kid who was, if not first team all Big Ten, he was second team. He had 326. That kid knows what he's doing, getting his name entering it in early, because power schools like in the Southeast will spend an awful lot of money on college free agents. So I don't know the specific dollar amount, but it ain't cheap, Ira.
No question. Yeah, and they're going to have to, obviously. They've got some arms they like. They've got some young arms they like, but I don't think that they feel like they're just going to be able to ride with what they've developed so far. Obviously, when you're losing, what they're going to be losing this offseason, starting at, obviously at the top with maybe the number 1 pick in the draft and Jamie Arnold. I do wonder if, and I don't know, and maybe you do, but I feel like I've got a decent handle at times on how the NIL money gets divided on a football team, just because we know how it works in the NFL. Like, we know the positions that are the high dollar positions. And that's kind of the model a lot of these college teams are looking for is, if you can if you're a quarterback, or you can affect a quarterback, or you can protect the quarterback, those are obviously marquee positions because that position is so important. I don't know if I have a great feel for baseball.
Yeah,
a home run hitter that's a huge power hitter that's also a good, also hits for average. Is that much more valuable than a number 2 pitcher or a number 3 pitcher? I don't know how.
Yeah.
Because the other part of it is, I don't know. I don't know how attractive it is to go to a school if you're going to be the 3. I guess the reason I'm going to that is my first thought was, well, because if you look at some of these SEC schools or the Texas schools, and if they just want to stockpile arms, if they just want to be the Yankees or or the Mets, one of these high spending payrolls, or the Dodgers, and they just want to buy up all the acquisitions. Well, I don't know how many of these college pitchers are going to be willing to do that, because
Right.
you would think they want to be the number one guy or the frontline guy, because they want to pitch on the Friday nights against the other staff aces. So I'm curious. I don't know the nuances of how the NIL works in college baseball.
That's a really good point, because none of these guys want to be in the bullpen. First of all,
Right.
None of them want to be in the bullpen. Even if they've got specialty wipeout bullpen stuff, like they want to show their wares. So you don't want to be a 4th starter. Yeah, right. That's a specific to college unique situation. I would say what position they play obviously matters. If they could mash and they play outfield or short, I mean, right, you're going to be more expensive than a first baseman. Because if you look at Major League Baseball free agency, first basemen aren't that expensive. Like, you could be a guy who hits 25, 30 home runs, and you're going to make a pittance compared to what a third baseman or a center fielder can do or can make if they produce the same numbers at the plate. And then also, I would imagine
there's a reason. There's a reason you guys paid Soto what you paid him.
Correct. Well, yes. And also age. That one helped because he's 26.
Yeah, right.
But yes, it was a massive overpay. I don't think anybody argues that. But
hey, listen, that's what's going to happen with Gunnar Henderson.
Yep.
And so, I mean, it's going to be this. That's why the Orioles are going to lose him, because he's a shortstop and a great bat, and he's young, and it's going to be insane when he goes on the market.
I would think, given what Florida State was not able to do as a staff this year, which was create consistent depth. You could look at that, the Evan Crest injury from that point on, either midweek starter or consistent bullpen help. I would think if they have free agent dollars, so to speak, they're going to spend it on pitching. So appreciate those questions. Appreciate everybody's deep concerns about Florida State's pitching staff. Tonight's program, as always, is presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. He loves the game of baseball. In fact, he's got a young family member of his who's deeply involved in the game of college baseball, and he'll be watching Florida State very closely this weekend, I'm sure, in the regional postseason. But Russ Voorhis supports all Florida State sports, and he does so with his wallet, and he does so with passion, because he is a Nole. He's just like you out there. So if you have any insurance needs, Ira, there's one guy to call, and he serves 3 different states in our southeastern footprint.
I'm like a kindergartner, the way you set that up for me every week. If you're in Florida, Georgia, or Alabama, any of these 3 states down here in the Southeast, Russ Voorhis and his insurance company and his staff can definitely help you out. They can service all of your insurance needs. And they do have offices over there in the Jacksonville area. They've got 2 brick and mortar offices in Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park. You can contact them by phone. You can go to their website, russvorhis.com, RUSSVORHIS.com, and you can submit a request for information. And, listen, man, if you get Russ on the phone, maybe you could talk a little bit of little Noles baseball.
Also, remember, yes, Warchant sent you, so we can get some love from Russ. So many of you out there have joined the State Farm family through Russ Voorhis because you watched the Smash and you paid attention to Warchant. So we very much appreciate that. His website, russvorhis.com, RUSSVORHIS.com. All right, let's get into a position preview. We've done a couple of these. There was one released today on the channel this afternoon. That was the wide receiver position breakdown. Running back breakdown was released before it. In case you didn't catch those, everybody, we've also placed those videos. You could just search for them, but we placed those videos in their own playlist. So as we knock down all the position groups for Florida State in the offseason, and we give you a great thorough head-to-toe of what's going on, you can find it all in one playlist. So remember that, bookmark it, especially when you forget all this information around August 25th and you want to have a glass of wine and go get caught up on what Florida State is doing at each position group. The offensive line is really kind of a one-man position battle, I feel like, at this point, because Florida State brought in 4 super seniors, essentially. I don't know that Medley is that old, but 3 of the guys.
Medley may be the oldest of all.
Okay, so Medley
he's going into his 7th season.
My goodness. Okay, so just like Luke Pettibone in the middle, just like Micah Pettis, just like Gunnar Hansen, you've got old dudes leading the way and one probable interior spot that's opening up for grabs. But there are a couple of favorites there too, Ira. So where is the intrigue at the offensive line discussion in the offseason for you?
Well, I think the intrigue is I'm sure a lot of people that just heard you say that got a little PTSD from last year when the talking point was how Florida State had the oldest offensive line in the country. They had a zillion combined starts. And, and people are sitting here saying, well, wait a minute. We heard this last year. That's why that offensive line was going to be so good. I think the difference here is that offensive line was pretty much all guys. They brought in a couple of transfers that they were hoping to really step in and help, including a couple of the ones that we're going to talk about here. But for the most part, the bulk of it was guys who have been in this system for the last 4 or 5 years. Talking about Maurice Smith, Robert Scott, Darius Washington, Jeremiah Byers had been here for a couple of years at that point. So the feeling was that group was going to be the nucleus, and they did have a ton of starts, but all of those starts came at Florida State. All those starts came under Alex Atkins. And then it was a disaster. It clearly was not what they expected it to be. And it really, I feel like, was the downfall of the team, because once they couldn't run the ball, DJ was done. They didn't have good enough receivers to overcome that, especially when you got Destin Hill was hurt and a couple other guys were banged up. So it was just a perfect storm. But to me, it all really crumbled when they couldn't run the football with that offensive line. The difference here is these are all guys that started for multiple years at pretty good programs, or you could make a case good offenses. Luke Pettibone he started at Wake Forest for over 2 years, and you could say, well, Wake Forest isn't great. But that offense was very good, and he literally, he got more praise than anybody, maybe anybody on the entire offense this spring. Gus Malzahn, Mike Norvell, the coaching staff, they love him, how smart he is, how tough he is. I was talking to somebody on the staff, and they were saying, listen, he's not the biggest, strongest dude in the world, but you're in for a fight if you line up across him, and comes from a football family. So you're going to get, I think, a very honest day's work every time out of Luke Pettibone, and that's what you're asking for, somebody who's going to get in there and fight. Pettis and Hansen started, at high levels of college football. They started in the SEC for multiple years. Adrian Medley, the guy you mentioned, is from UCF, played in Gus Malzahn's offense for the last 3 or 4 years, and he's a seventh-year senior. He's probably, to me, the biggest question mark, because he did have a lot of injuries. The reason he is in his seventh year of college football is, well, part of it's because he came in back in COVID times, but also part of it is because he did have a lot of injuries. He's really only played the last couple of years. So you'll need him to stay healthy. But to me, the fact that all those guys not only have started for multiple years, but they've done it at other places, I feel like is a good sign.
Yeah, and there's a track record too, looking at their Pro Football Focus, which I know, but there's a lot of data for these kids, multiple seasons worth of data. So if you've got different graders across, that's why I think the more data you have, the more reliable the data is. It's a good size sample. Gunner, 35 starts, 27 at left tackle. Performed well at times against top flight competition. Not always. He was a little uneven. Right. But Ira, when they faced teams that had like talent or teams that had talent below what Vandy had when he played offensive line for them, he would grade out very, very well in those situations. And I think and the case was the same for Pettis. The case was the same for Medley. If you could get a group here that when they play teams they should beat, at least reputationally long-term, if you're thinking about Florida State versus other teams in the ACC, and they can handle at least that much, what a night and day experience that would be for Florida State fans.
Yeah. I think the big thing is you want a fighting chance. You don't need a guy. Gunnar Hansen, if Gunnar Hansen had had a superstar at Vandy against SEC defensive ends every week, he wouldn't have been on the market. He would have been in the NFL. So, you're kind of trying to find that sweet spot between a guy who's got a lot of experience, has played against good opponents, knows what that looks like, and also would be willing to stay in college for another year because, he was not necessarily a big time pro prospect after last season. So I think they feel like they've done that. And at the end of the day, this does not need to be, I don't believe, an unbelievable offensive line, because you do have a Tommy Castellanos in the backfield and some talented running backs, especially a couple of the ones that are arriving right now this summer, who are really going to help out that offensive line. Because, again, last year it was the marriage of not just having an offensive line that wasn't very good and was banged up, but also a quarterback who couldn't do anything with his legs to be a threat, to not only make plays with his legs, but to just get teams to back off. I mean, I think that was the thing. If I said, if Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins really misevaluated something last year, well, they certainly misevaluated a lot of things last year. But one of the big things I think they misevaluated is how teams would play them if they didn't have Jordan Travis back there. And when you have Jordan Travis back there, man, it changes how those teams how they act in every situation, run downs and pass downs. And so when you didn't have that anymore, now your offensive line has to play a more straight up game, a more legitimate man-on-man game, and they couldn't do it. This group kind of goes back to having that dynamic quarterback, and they'll have that advantage. So I don't need this offensive line to be elite. You just need them to be good and competent and fight and give these offensive guys a chance.
Well, and Gus Malzahn's offense, too, is an offensive lineman's best friend in a lot of ways. Number one, they do want to run the ball. That's the basics. Number two, they try to confuse you. So, a lot about what an offensive line will face in the defensive front, there might be hesitation for a half a step. And we know from watching Florida State defensively when they struggled the last couple of years, like when you hyper-focus on your own side, that hesitation can mean the difference between a gain of 1 and a gain of 4. And so this is, again, Gus is going to be putting these guys in a situation where if you're an offensive lineman, this is the scheme that you want to play. You're going to be running the ball 65% of the time. Everything's kind of straight ahead. And you could hear that in the interviews that we heard from either the newcomer series when these guys first got on campus, Ira, or during spring camp. These guys are excited to play in this scheme. They might have had to get up to speed, literally with the speed of the scheme, but they're very excited to play under Gus Malzahn.
Yeah, and I think, man, I'm excited to see what he does, the offensive coordinator, just because I think with everything that was going wrong on that team last year, I think Mike Norvell got a little distracted. I think he had a hard time focusing on what he could do to help that offense get going. Clearly, I mean, he could never find any solutions. And I think the fact that Gus Malzahn has the experience he has, he's got his offensive line coach Herb Hand, who's been with him for many years in the past, and they'll now have had that spring to really know what they have available to them. I'd look for them to come up with a good game plan to help those guys and to help the skill position guys also.
So looking at it real quick, we'll go down the line. I'll get you some sizes too on these players, the projected starters for Florida State. I think you're going to agree with me on these, Ira, but if you don't, feel free to speak up. Gunnar Hansen, 6'5", 330 pounds, in pencil or in ink as Florida State starting left tackle.
I'd put it, if he's healthy, I'm putting it in ink. Yeah. Okay.
Next up, we'll go with Micah Pettis, 6'7", 355. Those measurables are awesome, and he looks every bit of it. In pencil or in ink to be the starting right tackle for Florida State.
I'm going to put that in ink, and there's a little bit of concern because Pettis, both those guys were not available the whole time this spring. And so that's really the only, somebody asked me on our message boards on the Tribal Council the other day, why doesn't there seem to be more buzz about Pettis when they signed him? It was such a big deal. And I think the reason why is because, some of those guys weren't available much or in some cases at all in the spring. So there wasn't opportunities. Like you didn't hear people talking about them and how well they looked in practice because they weren't always available. Again, though, when you're talking about fifth-year, sixth-year offensive linemen, I think if you look across the country, not a lot of fifth- and sixth-year offensive linemen are playing in practice in the spring because they're coming off an injury, they're getting healthy, and they've played so much football. This is unique because you're bringing them all to a new place, but I'm not that concerned about it, especially when I think about, those guys have played, like they've been at previous schools. Your past performance is a good predictor of what you're going to do in the future. Those guys played a ton in the previous schools. So I think Pettis will be here. I think he'll be accountable and ready to go. And I'd put him in pen also at right tackle.
All right. 29 career starts for Pettis. 22 career starts for Luke Pettibone. In pencil, in ink, or in blood that he's going to be the starting center for Florida State.
We can put that one in blood. I have no doubt. And again, I hope people – I want to keep conveying this. They love Luke Pettibone in a way that is not normal for a first year. I mean, a guy that just got on campus. I mean, they love that kid. And if you talk to anybody in that program, they are so excited, especially after, what just happened. And that position is so important. And that was even at the one scrimmage we were at, we just noted that the snaps were all good. The snaps were all on time. And again, I just think and having a smart center helps those other guys immensely. So yeah, well, I'll put that one in blood.
Pretty good height for Pettibone as well, 6'2" and 303 pounds. Now Adrian Medley, 19 starts, 26 games overall at UCF, 6'5", 305 pounds. Adrian Medley, pencil, ink, that he's going to be one of the 2 starting guards. And if so, do you like a specific side for him, or is it too early to tell?
Yeah, I'd probably say pencil, just because I think they're going to have some pretty good competition. I mean, they're really excited about Otto. You got Rizzi back, Richie Leonard back. Medley, to me, the fact that he had so many injuries earlier in his career, then he ended up starting for the last year and a half, basically. I think 16 games maybe he started the last couple of years at UCF. I don't know that I was blown away looking at his PFF numbers that he's going to be a slam dunk. I like the idea of him getting in there and playing because he seems like a real smart kid. He does know the offense and he is an experienced dude, but I don't know that he's a high level talent based on after all the injuries. So I'm going to leave that one in pencil. How about you?
All right. I think so, just because of the familiarity. I think push comes to shove, at least for the Alabama game. The offensive coordinator and the position coach know what they have in Medley, and so therefore having somebody that is like that, I think, wins a tiebreaker if it's close. But the combatants are as follows, and this is where it does get interesting. You've got redshirt senior Richie Leonard, who came back. Obviously, he was the Florida transfer from last year. He got hurt. Extremely athletic for the size that he carries. He's listed at 6'2", 327. Feels like he was a little bit heavier than that. At least he looked like it the way he played last year. Redshirt senior Jacob Rizzi, 6'5", 316. He was a center guard when he came in from the Ivy League. Bryson Estes, where does the time go? A redshirt senior there. Yeah. Can't believe that. Redshirt sophomore Andre Otto, 6'5", 325, and he's gotten praise in every camp he's been on campus at Florida State. Also, wicked smart young man, so that tracks. Usually the offensive line interviews are pretty smart. How do you make sense of that, Ira? If Medley is in pencil, your top contenders are Leonard, Otto, or is Rizzi or Estes maybe getting in that conversation?
Yeah, I'm going to put Leonard and Penn in one of the guard spots.
Okay.
I'm going to put Leonard and Penn at one of the guard spots, and I think you're going to have a free-for-all in the other one. I just, again, I just think the fact that Leonard started, it looked like Leonard played well when he started that whole year at Florida. They were really excited about him coming in to last year. The whole line was a disaster. Then he got hurt early in the season. So I just don't think we can take anything that happened last year and put that on Richie Leonard. So I think there's a good chance he ends up being a guy and in that starting lineup at guard. And then I think Medley and Otto and Rizzi battle it out. But the good thing is whoever wins it or doesn't win it, you've got some good options. I feel good about the 2 deep, on the interior of the offensive line. Little bit curious about the tackle, just the depth at tackle. That to me is probably my biggest concern is if anything does happen to Hansen or Pettis, you get really young in a minute, unless, now Rizzi played tackles at Harvard. I don't know if that equates or not. I think Medley's maybe played some tackles, so maybe you can make it work. They tried Otto at tackle in the past, so maybe you can make it work where you don't have to go to Lucas Simmons, Jonathan Daniels, one of those guys. But I do think in the interior of the offensive line, I think whoever doesn't win those starting jobs, you're going to have some really good backups, I think. And
we should fully expect by drive 3 of every game that the backups will be in there and they'll rotate and we have a line change at offensive line.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
For people who take things literally, sorry about that. That's not what we are expecting at all. Gus likes to ride with the people that he deems to be the starters, and this is the way. The one thing that will be interesting is the conditioning part of it, though. If Florida State is able to break out and get into that tempo, I don't know if the Alabama game will be one of those. But let's say by kickoff against Miami, you've seen 4 games out of Florida State, and they're averaging 85 plays or 90 plays. Do they rotate based upon conditioning, or is everybody up to speed? That's just one small thing that we'll be looking for. Again, a long series of position breakdowns coming your way. Already 2 skill positions have been done. Running backs and receivers. Those are available on a playlist on Warchant TV. And Ira has articles on each and every one of these positions at the bottom in the comments section here underneath the smash. Once the show is complete, we will have Ira's full article on everybody on Florida State's offensive line. We're going to regroup here. Short message from State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, our awesome sponsor, and we will be back in just under 20 seconds right here on Warchant TV.
Contact Russ Voorhis for an auto quote today.
Feels good to be pedaling the bike again here, Ira, for a smash. This is nice to be back in the chair. We hope you're enjoying it here on Warchant TV. Hit the like button underneath the video. Subscribe to the channel. It's always free. And if you are a student at Florida State, listen up. I'm not putting anything on the screen, so listen to me carefully. There is a free opportunity for you, and is the opportunity of a student career. Florida State, if you love the Noles and you want great coverage, join us at warchant.com for a free membership. A free subscription to warchant.com. It is a $120 value, yours free. All you have to do, get out your pencil and paper, or better yet, your notes app on your phone. You're going to email support@warchant.com. That is support@warchant.com with your fsu.edu email address to prove that you are a student at Florida State. And that's it. Come join us on the message boards. Come enjoy all the great content at warchant.com. Welcome to the Seminole family from Warchant, and we hope you enjoy Tallahassee as much as I did in my undergrad, and Ira has as a resident for how long now, Ira? How long have you lived in Tally?
23 years. 23 years. By the way, I looked at the support email account, and the students are getting after it. We have put out the call, and the students are getting after it a lot, which is, again, I really think that speaks to the YouTube audience more than anything, because that's really where we've attracted so many students paying attention to our content. A lot of times the subscription side, the warchant.com side, where you've got to pay $120, not always super appealing to a college student, but the YouTube audience has really grown in that demographic. And man, they're taking advantage of this offer. So we're excited to have them in and then take part of the conversations on the message boards, because it's always good to hear different viewpoints.
I should also stress for the kiddies out there, no credit card required. This is absolutely free. Like, this is just a straight goodwill welcome gift. And we know free stuff in college kids is like, jorts at a Florida tailgate. There's going to be a lot of action going on between the two. John has a question from Facebook. It's a very general question. Does the offense look good? We talking now? Are we talking in the season? Ira, open-ended, I suppose. Do you think the offense looks good this year?
I think it's going to look much better than last year. How about that? We'll use that as a qualifier. I think that's the point I've been trying to hammer home to people is, we're so scarred by what we saw last year from that offense. And the way our brains are trained in college football is and probably in pro football to some degree, is you just expect maybe some incremental growth from year to year. You don't expect it to look entirely different. Well, just the way it looked entirely different from 2023 to 2024, it can look entirely different to 2024 to 2025 when you consider it's a new offensive coordinator, it's a new offensive system, it's going to be a new play caller on game day. Several of the assistant coaches are new. Almost all of the starters will be new. You might have a couple of starters that started last season, but for the vast majority, it's going to be new guys. And even some of the returning guys like Richie Leonard or Jalen Lucas or Roydell Williams, they didn't even play for more than like 10 snaps or 20 snaps because they got hurt last year. So, again, it's just going to be a completely different offense. Now, I'm not telling you that they're going to be an all-time great offense or that you should just expect they're going to be great because they're new, but don't let what happened last year make you worry, just fearful about this year, because it's going to be an entirely different group.
It will be. And it would be nice to have a ramp up. The Alabama game might obfuscate that just a little bit. So hang in there. We'll see what they are by the time we get into late September, early October. Grillmaster asks, and this is a footnote from our earlier discussion, are any young offensive linemen pushing the transfers at all? Is it just Otto, do you think, Ira, or would you throw somebody else in there?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anybody I'm not thinking of, but yeah, I think Otto's the main one. He's one, and he's a redshirt sophomore now, so it's not out of the question for him to really step up. But I just, talking to some people in the spring, they really kind of eyes lit up talking about Andre Otto. They really like him. Again, I think he was a high school wrestler, which again speaks to that, just the toughness. I think he might have talked about it on the interview with Jeff, the JCS. And So I think we know he's a really smart kid, but he's also a tough kid. We saw it when he came in as a true freshman in practice, the way he was kind of sticking his nose in there. So it's about time. Plus, it's a new coaching staff. I also think, and again, Rizzi to me is a guy that might be unlocked a little bit by a change on the coaching staff. I don't feel like it felt like for whatever reason, Alex Atkins was very reluctant to give him a lot of chances last year. He played most of the second half of the season. And according to PFF, his numbers were actually pretty good, better than some of the guys he was playing behind. So I think with a new coaching staff and, maybe that'll help him. But yeah, I still think a lot of those young offensive linemen, because what happened, and just to kind of explain the big picture situation real quickly, the classes that they signed 3 and 4 years ago on the offensive line are like all gone now. Before that class with Otto and Lucas Simmons, those classes before that, those 2 years before that, those kids are pretty much all gone. Estes is one of the lone survivors that's, stayed around now for 5 years, but a lot of those guys have taken off. And so you have a gap between the transfers and then like that young group who I still feel like might be another year away.
I think probably so. I think that you're going to have to hit the portal again this offseason. Now that's for another day, but it just seems like, barring some kind of incredible thing called development between now and December, which
it's possible.
It is possible. And they do have a couple of chances early in the schedule to see what they can do, right, Ira, because when you're playing Commerce and you're playing Kent State, you should be able to get deep into that 2-3 deep with the offensive line.
That's a great point, man. Especially, if you play well against Alabama, win it, or at least play well on offense. Yeah, man, I would definitely give those younger, especially the tackles. I keep focusing on the tackles. I would want to see what Jonathan Daniels, Lucas Simmons, some of those other young tackles can do in a game like that. Manasseh Atite from last year. In those games, give them some opportunities, because you don't want to wait till you have to use them midway through the season. You'd love to get a look. I think that's a great point.
Garrett PCL asks, and we appreciate you being a member on the channel, Garrett, can Tommy's leadership elevate this offense? DJ obviously didn't have command of the team. If guys want to play harder for Tommy, I think that can lead to more points. Ira, you're nodding. Why?
Yeah, 1,000%. A lot of times coaches would make the comment when they talk about quarterbacks is, the best quarterback is the quarterback that makes everyone around them play better. And I would always hear that and not really understand what it meant. Like when I was, earlier in my career, maybe, I think now I know what it means. It really does mean that. It means exactly that. It means guys rally around them. A comment, something else I always reflect on back early when I was covering high school football in South Georgia. Thomas County Central had a great running back named Johnny Cooksey. And one of the offensive linemen, he ran for 2,000 yards, recruited by Georgia, everywhere else. He didn't qualify. That's why you've never heard of him. But he was an amazing high school running back. I was talking to one of the offensive linemen, and he said to me, I block. I think, I can't remember how the conversation came up, but when he told me he was an offensive lineman at Central, he's like, I block for Johnny. Like, that's how he identified himself, as I block for Johnny. That's my job. And to me, when you have an elite player, whether it's a running back, and sometimes it's because of they're an elite player, but sometimes also it's because of their personality, and they kind of galvanize everybody around them. They play for that person. Man, there's no doubt in anybody's mind that those guys played for Jordan Travis those last couple of years. I mean, it's if you watch those games, those dudes played for Jordan Travis, and you can see it when he got hurt, the way their reactions were on the field. They played for Jordan Travis. Tommy's got that kind of personality. Now he's going to have to back it up. He's going to have to play. He's got to make plays. Jordan earned it over time. Johnny Cooksey back in the day earned it over time. So Tommy can't go out there. He's got the personality, no question. If he goes out there and turns it over 4 times, I don't know how fired up people are going to be playing for Tommy. So, but he's got to play well. But if he does, he definitely has the personality. And I agree 100% with what Garrett was saying. You really never were going to get that out of DJ. One of the other things DJ needed was probably other people to assume that role, and they didn't have anybody do it.
Yeah, I think, winning would have helped other people assume that role, because then the people stand out, and then merit takes over. But lesson learned from last year, don't try and let a meritocracy take over. You need somebody to lead the charge. Yeah. Tommy did that, at least on the recruiting front, the transfer portal front. Shortly after, jumping on with Florida State, he was present there, and there were plenty of stories since then. I think also reputationally, Tommy's got some work to do here. He wants to send a message that whatever happened in Boston College, that was on the coaching side. That wasn't on my side. I didn't quit on people. They quit on me. And I think that also, when you're talking about motivations at a new place, I think Tommy wants to set the record straight that he's a good teammate. And here's a big chance to do so with 2 marquee games for Florida State in the first 5 games of the season.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100% true. And, especially, I don't know what his NFL aspirations are. I don't know what his NFL possibilities are. But in terms of his reputation as a college football player, and, one other positive is the fact he grew up loving Florida State. He's related to Devontae Freeman. So that's another reason. But yeah, I do think it's an added, it's kind of like the phrase, if you meet an asshole, can we say that? If you meet an a-hole, Tom?
We did.
If you meet an a-hole once, maybe he's the a-hole, but if you meet a-holes all the time, you're probably the a-hole.
Oh, yeah.
If you're constantly getting in situations where things aren't working out well, sometimes you got to look at yourself. So yeah, man, I think there's every reason for Tommy to really, kind of prove that, that situation was unfair to him, which I do think in some ways it might have been unfair to him because, Bill O'Brien had no interest in doing anything around Tommy Castellanos, even though he was a returning starter. It was trying to force that square peg into a round hole. And so, yeah, I think Tommy, that's probably part of his motivation, I bet.
That was the one thing when it all went down. If you're a college fan and not a pro fan, I just, from Bill O'Brien's reputation in the NFL, I'm like, everybody pump the brakes. This guy ain't exactly sterling in his own right. Bill O'Brien, I'm talking about. Right. Plenty of issues in Houston, and it can take 2 to tango, but sometimes Tommy Castellanos wants to prove it. There could just be one party that kind of spoiled the whole thing. So that's what Tallahassee came calling for that reason, and we'll see what he does. And the leadership thing is going to be something we watch very, very closely early on in the season. Noble Noles says, something I don't get. If we win our region and Oregon State loses, where do we play supers? Tallahassee would be the answer, Noble Noel. That would be really strange if Oregon State did not come out of its own bracket and then people had to go to Corvallis and the folks in Corvallis just had to sit there and take it and watch 2 other teams play on their field for a right to go to Omaha.
Well, yeah, I think like in the letter of the law, like if Florida State didn't put in a bid, if Florida State didn't put in a great bid, or Florida State didn't have great facilities, like there is a mechanism, or whoever the 2 seed is in their super regional, or in their regional, like if it was like a UConn, or it was like or a school that didn't have great facilities won that regional, but they were the higher seed, like that would be, or if the host site in Tallahassee didn't have great facilities, but the other one did, like a 2 there. I think there's a mechanism where they could do that, but it's definitely not going to happen here. When the school is Florida State, they're going to be coming to Florida State. And if it was like the 2 seed there was LSU and the host here was Southern Miss, maybe there's some wiggle room because it gets down to like your bid and how much you're going to make on your regional. But yeah, there's no question in this one.
Side question for you regarding baseball. You're saying that you didn't get some great sleep last night, so you're trying to chase it. Who do you think values a good night's sleep more and a routine? You in this moment because you didn't get a lot of rest last night, or Link Jarrett always?
He's listen, man, what I'll give him credit for, and what you're referencing is he wants to play the afternoon game on Friday because he does not want to play the late game on Friday, which a lot of fans would want because they love the primetime game. They get home from work, can shower, come out to the park, enjoy the night, have some libations, and really get after it. His concern is he doesn't want to have any chance of playing that late game, being stuck in the park late at night and losing somehow in that 1-4 game. And then you got to play at noon the next day. So because of that, he signed up to play the early game. And it sounds like he's going to do that from now until eternity. He wants to play that early game.
There's a long track record too. Last year was they were delayed on the tarmac by several hours for one of their road trips. He clearly hated with the fire of 1,000 suns the trip out to Berkeley to go play Wow. And the jet lag. He's still talking about the jet lag. Link values a good night's sleep, I think, more, and on a routine, more than just about anybody on the planet.
I do think it's important. I think that stuff's important. I do think it's important.
It is. And yes, if you said, wait a minute, when are they playing? 3:00 is the scheduled start time for Florida State on Friday in the regional, weather permitting. Friday schedule looks like, or weather report looks like it could be a little rainy, but they want to get that game in first. And in that specific instance, I totally understand Link's rationale. Back to football and recruiting, Jason Brown asks, do you believe with the way the players leave, high school recruiting should be priority number 2? Can't make a kid stay really in this current climate. Well, that last sentence is true. You can't make a kid stay, but usually the really good ones you get out of high school, they're paid to stick around and they don't hit the market. There are some every year, but I mean, I think if you could be good at one or the other, I think you want to be good, Ira, at high school recruiting, because then you have the kid on campus and if you have to part with money, it's because the kid was good once he got on campus. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think at a school like Florida State particularly, again, the challenge if you're at, a smaller school somewhere or a school that's not going to compete for a national title, maybe doesn't get quite the same exposure, and you've got an elite player, you're going to have a hard time keeping them. But if you're at this level, and listen, there's always going to be extenuating circumstances. Ohio State's running back last year transferred from Ole Miss. It wasn't like he wasn't getting exposure at Ole Miss, but he ended up winning a national title at Ohio State, and they paid him handsomely. Some players are just going to want to go on the open market, whether or not they love it where they are or not. That was the beauty of that 2023 team is Jordan Travis and Jared Verse and all those guys didn't go on the open market. They negotiated deals to stay put because they really wanted to be here and because they thought they could win it all. So I think Florida State's at a place where if you've got elite high school players coming through and things are going in the right direction for them and they see the program's going in the right direction and they're being used in the right way, the resources are there thanks to the Battle's End and maybe with revenue sharing to keep them in place. And maybe you can get a hometown discount because they started with you. So I don't think I'm with you. I think it's at a school like Florida State, you definitely, if you can get those elite high school players, the problem is they just haven't gotten them. They have not been able to recruit at that level, partly because things were so bad when Norvell got here. And then those couple of years where they got good, they just were all in on the portal and kind of maybe lost their focus on the high school recruiting.
And if you have hopes for what this staff can do, this new staff in terms of recruiting, the next month is going to go a long way in either fortifying those hopes or dashing them. And we're going to cover that for you here at warchant.com, Warchant TV. Make sure to stay tuned because official visits galore, Ira, begin in short order here for Florida State. Starting this week and all through the month of June, they're going to be quite busy on campus every weekend.
Yeah, Michael has a story that'll be going up on the website soon. I think you guys might be doing a video about it as well. But I think that right now they have 6 official visitors this weekend. Some offensive and defensive linemen kind of are the focal point of it. They've got some 4-star prospects coming in on the offensive defensive lines. But yeah, over the course of the month, we were hearing 60 plus. I heard the other day it might be up to 80 official visitors coming to Florida State's campus this month. I mean, it's going to be wall-to-wall recruits. Again, we'll see if they got to bring them home. They've got to land the commitments, and then they've got to keep them. So that's just one step in the process. But getting them here for official visits is definitely a positive development. The one guy Matt wrote about earlier today, Chauncey Kennan, really one of the best cornerbacks in the country from Sarasota, top 5 cornerback. There's a story on the website about it today. He announced that he's going to make his commitment in early July. Florida State is one of really the top schools in that competition. Miami and Florida are in it as well. Georgia, a couple other schools are involved as well. But a guy like that, a top 5 cornerback in the country, would really do wonders for Mike Norvell.
Dr. Lasagna has accused me of drinking vodka on the rocks. I can assure you this is just merely LaCroix, the finest vintage of LaCroix raspberry. And he also says, Tom, how many Mets games have you been to in your lifetime? Didn't you move to New York? I did. I enjoyed the year I was up there in New York. I'm back in Tallahassee. Last year I made to 5. And I'd say probably, and I want to know what your number is for Orioles games, Ira, but 50 or 60, I'd say. Probably evenly split between ones in New York and then ones throughout the country. A lot of Atlanta Mets games over the years. But how many Orioles games are over or under 50?
I think I'm probably under, man. I'm probably under. When I was a little kid, we would go a good bit to Memorial Stadium. When I was living in Maryland and I was born in Towson, Baltimore County, and I had some uncles that were season ticket holders to the Colts and the Orioles. And so it was kind of like my dad didn't care at all. He's from New York. So he was not interested. My mom was marginally interested. So I would have to tag along with their side of the family. And then as an adult, I mean, I've probably gone to 20 or so. So I don't know I don't think I'm at 50. But I admire you for doing that. That's awesome.
It was fun to go to a lot of those games last year, but if you don't like bumper to bumper traffic, that's why I only went to 5. It's like 15 miles, Ira, from where I was to the ballpark. You think, oh, that's awesome. It's really not. It took about 90 minutes each way to go 15 miles. And there's no train service that gets you any. It's the worst. But what's not the worst is Warchant.com and Warchant TV. In fact, it has the best coverage of Florida State in the business. And coming up this week, I know in the staff circles, I don't think we're going to have anything released this week. Ira, we have to start thinking about our top 40. Oh, no. This is a very difficult assignment this year.
It's very difficult, and I'm going to resist the urge to not look back at my top 40 for last year because I think that'll hurt my feelings, Tom. I'm pretty thick-skinned. I've had a lot of failure in my life and adversity. I can fight through most anything. I do not want to look at my top 40 from last year, especially my personal one, because I think it'll hurt my feelings. But yeah, we'll get to do it again. And it's just one of those fun activities, rites of passage in the summer. Maybe people will look at it with a chuckle this year as they think back to how wrong we were about the 2024 Seminoles.
Usually we do a recap of that. It stood on its own. We didn't need to do it.
We would have agreed to do it if Mike Norvell would have agreed to come on with us and just kind of walk back through memory lane with us.
Here are 4 of my top 5. I'm not going to reveal yours, but I'm sure they were pretty similar. 4 of my top 5 were DJU, right. Darius Washington, Patrick Payton.
He was going to be an All-American, remember?
That is first team. First, it didn't even say all honorable mention. He was like first team All-American. And Malik Benson. Ouch. Yeah. This year, I already started to do it today, Ira, because I'm studious like that. I got to 19 and I went, crap, I don't know where to go from here. So
going down, or do you go up or do you go down?
1 through 19. So I go 1 through 19 and I'm getting to the halfway point. I'm like, how's Tony White going to use these guys? I don't know what tight end to pick because there's like 7 of them. The running backs, who the hell knows? This is going to be a toughie.
So maybe we'll do a show kind of how our top 40s evolve, because the way I do it is I'll take the whole roster and I'll just throw them on anybody I think might be in the top 40. They're going on my page. And then I actually kind of usually start going from the bottom up. And then as I'm going, then I'll be like, okay, this person's top 10. So I'll push them in a different pile and then I'll go that way. And then I end up usually somewhere in the middle where I've got too many guys between like 15 and 25. And now I've got to mush them together and drop people down. And then that ends up kicking people off the list entirely. But that's interesting. It would be funny to talk about how all of us come up with our different top 40s.
That might be more interesting than numbers 33 to 40. Like maybe that's the video we do is like, how the hell did you come up with this list, everybody? That's what's coming up on the channel. Anything you'd like to promote, good sir, coming up on the site this week? You just already did, I know, with recruiting coverage.
Yeah, I know. And then pre-baseball tournament. Corey's got a column up on the site right now talking about you probably heard him talking about it on Wake Up Warchant and also a little bit on headlines today, but just talking about the way the SEC, ACC seeding in the NCAA tournament, kind of how that worked out. Shockingly, the SEC was disproportionately rewarded for their season versus the ACC. So he's got a column up on that, but we'll have a lot of coverage over the next couple of days on looking at the regional. One of our student interns Sam has done a piece in the past where he's looked at breaking down the regional kind of in a capsule format. He reached out and said he'll be doing that for us again. So that'll be on the site. And then there'll be much more coverage leading into the regional tournament. And then also the position previews. The last position preview written that we put up on the site was cornerbacks. We're a little bit ahead in the written content, and we'll have the safeties coming up pretty soon on the written content as well.
That's a toughie. Now, we know the players, but that's a tough one to figure on. That'll be an interesting one to read coming up on the site. To give you an update, Ira, I know you're wondering, bottom of the 5th right now, the O's are trailing 3-1, but they got 2 on for Mountcastle. Mountcastle's at the plate. How do you like it?
Mountcastle's been struggling. I love Ryan Mountcastle. He has been struggling. And the thing was, with the season going so well, people have been thinking he's going to be one of those trade pieces because somebody's going to want him. But it's almost like I think he just wants to stay in Baltimore, Tom.
Yeah.
He's never hit worse than he's hit over the last month. So we'll see.
He's trying to make tonight that night. He's already off to a 2-for-2 start with two
What?
doubles. 2 doubles, Ira. Go figure.
Right.
And then for everybody that's very concerned about the Mets, they're up 4-2 right now in the bottom of the third. There you go. So that's what you come here to Warchant TV for. Make sure you hit the like button underneath the video, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you out there. We also appreciate, as always, our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ for his support. We will catch you all next Monday, normal slot, barring a play-in, like a final game in the regional that gets scheduled for the evening. We will be here live at 7 o'clock next Monday for you on the Smash. And we also want to thank Director Ben Spicer behind the scenes for producing tonight's program. Yes, good sir.
And so next week, man, I promise, Kayvon, I'm going to be drinking at least beer.
Okay.
And if they win the regional and Oregon State loses and the Supers are going to be here, we're breaking out the tequila.
Okay.
That's my vow next Monday.
We're going to
celebrate with some tequila. If they're going to be at home. They're going to be at home for the Supers.
We will call it a super shot, and I will do a shot with you. I don't know what it will be, a liqueur, but I don't know if it will be tequila. But we will do super shots next Monday on the Smash if Florida State hosts the Super Regionals, and we'll be having a beverage with you either way. Thank you to everybody for checking in, and if you're watching this on demand, make sure to find us on the channel next Monday, 7 o'clock. We appreciate you watching. This is Tom Lang. That's Ira Chaffel. Good night, everybody. We'll talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV.